Emily had never imagined her life unfolding quite like this. At 26, freshly married for less than a year, she found herself trapped in a marriage that had been arranged more than chosen. She wasn't in love, not by a long shot, but she'd gone along with it to please her parents, who were eager to see her settled before her mother's health declined further. The story began in the quiet town of Ashford, nestled somewhere between the rolling hills of the English countryside and the bustling life of London. Emily, a striking woman with deep hazel eyes and a cascade of chestnut hair that framed her delicate face, was dressed that day in a soft cream blouse paired with a flowing navy skirt that hugged her slender waist. Her feet were slipped into modest yet elegant nude heels, and a simple silver locket hung from her neck. Her mother's gift on the day of her engagement. Emily's husband, James Carter, was everything she hadn't wanted in a partner. Tall, with broad shoulders and the confident swagger of someone born into privilege, James was a man who seemed to believe money could buy happiness, a notion Emily wasn't convinced of. Their marriage was a classic case of convenience over chemistry. James had pursued her relentlessly, practically showing up at their local library where Emily worked part-time, trying to strike up conversations that felt more like rehearsed lines than genuine interest. When Emily first refused his advances, James was undeterred. He called her father more times than she could count, assuring him that he was the perfect match, financially stable, well-established and respectful. Her father, a pragmatic man who ran a small but successful antiques shop in town, finally convinced Emily to consider the match seriously. "He's a good man, Emily. Steady with a future. Isn't that what you want?" he urged. Emily reluctantly agreed, her heart heavy with doubt but her desire to see her mother happy stronger than her own hesitations. Their engagement lasted 6 months, a blur of expensive gifts and polite smiles. James showered her with jewelry and fancy dinners, but Emily's heart remained untouched. She worked quietly at the library, shelving books and helping patrons, while James boasted about his wealth and promised her a life of luxury, a queen without the need to lift a finger. The wedding was a grand affair for Ashford standards, held in a quaint village church with white roses cascading down the aisle. Emily wore a vintage lace dress that clung gently to her curves, her hair pinned up with delicate pearl clips. James looked dashing in his tailored navy suit, the picture of success, but the honeymoon was short-lived. Within a month of their marriage, Emily noticed James rarely left the house for work. When she asked, he brushed it off with vague answers, insisting she didn't need to worry about such trivial matters. "You just focus on us, Em. I've got everything covered," he'd say. But the unease in her stomach only grew. One evening, Emily's curiosity got the better of her. She found James asleep on the couch but his phone was ringing insistently. She answered it, her voice barely above a whisper. The conversation she overheard shattered the fragile trust she tried to build. A man's voice demanded, "Where's the money? We agreed you'd pay back by now." James murmured something inaudible. Then the caller's tone hardened, "You said you'd have it sorted months ago. This isn't a joke." Emily's heart pounded. She confronted James, who laughed nervously, calling the whole thing a misunderstanding with an old friend. But the damage was done. She discovered James was drowning in debt, borrowing from dangerous people and living a lie of wealth. When Emily voiced her fears, James grew distant, retreating into silence and shadows. One night, he revealed a desperate plan: to bring some of these men into their home, to work things out in a way Emily couldn't quite understand. Her mind spun. "You want me to do what?" she asked aghast. James's eyes were pleading but cold. "It's the only way to save us. Trust me." Emily, torn between fear and the faintest flicker of loyalty, agreed to a degree, deciding to play along until she could find a way out. That night, when James's so-called friend arrived, Emily found herself caught in a surreal, unsettling dance of power and desperation. The hours that followed blurred into a haze of forced smiles and whispered promises. Emily, dressed in a silk blouse that slipped just enough to reveal the curve of her collarbone, felt a strange blend of vulnerability and strength. Her legs curled beneath her on the worn velvet sofa, heels kicked off, heart pounding like a drum in the silence. James seemed almost buoyant after, a stark contrast to the man she thought she knew. He promised change, a future beyond the shadows. Yet, as Emily lay awake that night, the cool moonlight casting long shadows across their bedroom, a chilling question gnawed at her. How deep had they sunk, and was there any way back? Outside, the quiet streets of Ashford held their breath, unaware of the storm brewing behind the closed doors of number 12 Willow Lane. And then in the darkest hour Emily's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk, we're watching. Don't trust him. Asterisk, the game had just begun. The morning light filtered softly through the lace curtains of number 12, casting delicate patterns across the modest bedroom where Emily lay awake, tangled beneath the sheets. Her skin tingled from the night's uneasy encounters, not just from the physical, but from the emotional turbulence that churned inside her. The silk blouse she'd worn yesterday now lay crumpled in the corner, a silent witness to the fragility of her new reality. She sat up slowly, her slender fingers tracing the silver locket resting against her collarbone, a talisman from her mother that felt heavier today than ever before. Deep hazel eyes stared into the mirror across the room, searching for a reflection that still felt like herself. The woman who smiled through polite conversation at the library, who loved quiet evenings with a good book, was fading fast. Downstairs, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of toast. James was already up, his tailored navy blazer hanging neatly on the coat rack, his usual air of confidence replaced by a tense, restless energy. He paced the living room with a furrowed brow, muttering softly as if rehearsing lines for an unseen audience. Emily slipped into a soft cashmere sweater and jeans, opting for comfort over style. Her feet slid into worn leather ankle boots, scuffed from the damp Ashford streets. She needed to face the day, despite the weight pressing down on her chest at the kitchen table. James looked up, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morning," he said, voice hoarse. "Morning," Emily replied cautiously, pouring herself a cup of coffee. The silence stretched, thick and awkward, until she finally broke it. "We need to talk about last night," James sighed, running a hand through his unruly dark hair. "Look, I know it's not what you imagined. I never wanted you to be involved in this. Just, things got out of hand." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Out of hand? James, you're borrowing money from dangerous people, then inviting them into our home. What exactly did you think would happen?" He chuckled bitterly. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was, well, smarter than all this. Turns out I'm just a guy who's made a mess." She studied him. The sharp cheekbones, the stubbled jaw, the way his green eyes flashed with desperation beneath the bravado. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why hide it?" "Because I didn't want to lose you," he admitted, voice cracking. "I wanted to protect you from my mess." Emily's laugh was hollow. "Protect me? By dragging me into it?" Before James could respond, her phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with the same unknown number. Her heart skipped. The message read, "Asterisk, meet me at the old pier tonight. Come alone." Asterisk, she swallowed hard, suddenly aware that the shadows lurking in their lives were far darker and more dangerous than she'd realized. That afternoon, Emily returned to the library, the familiar scent of old pages and polished wood a small comfort. She wore a simple navy dress with a modest neckline, paired with black flats that clicked softly on the floor. Her hair was pulled back into a loose bun, strands framing her face to soften its sharp edges. As she shelved books, a patron approached, a middle-aged man with a kindly smile and a tweed jacket. "Emily, isn't it? I heard you've been having a bit of a rough patch. If you ever need to talk, there's someone in town who might be able to help." Emily blinked, unsure whether to trust the stranger's kindness or dismiss it as small-town gossip. "Thank you," she said carefully. "I'll keep that in mind." Back home, James was gone, leaving a note. Asterisk, "I'm sorting things out. Don't do anything reckless." Asterisk, but Emily's mind was already made up. The message she'd received was a summons she couldn't ignore. When night fell, the streets of Ashford seemed eerily quiet. Emily donned a sleek black coat over a fitted burgundy dress that hugged her curves just enough to turn heads without inviting trouble. Her heels clicked purposefully on the cobblestones as she made her way toward the old pier, a place where the river lapped quietly against weathered wood, and secrets seemed to hang in the salty air. The pier was deserted except for a single figure standing near the edge, illuminated by the weak glow of a street lamp. As she approached, the figure turned, a woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and a knowing smile. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she wore a leather jacket over a casual blouse, exuding an air of confidence and danger. "Emily Carter?" the woman asked. "Yes," Emily replied, voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "I'm Claire. I know what you're dealing with, and I can help." Emily hesitated. the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "Why should I trust you?" Claire smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "'Cause I've been where you are. And because sometimes to fight fire, you need a little smoke," as the river whispered beneath them. Emily realized her life was no longer hers alone. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but for the first time she felt a spark of hope. Still, as she turned to leave, the faint sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Too many, too close, and somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "Asterisk, she's made her choice. Now let's see if she can survive it." Asterisk. The cold night air bit at Emily's cheeks as she stepped away from the shadowed figure of Claire, the woman's parting words lingering like smoke in her mind. The old pier creaked beneath her heels, each step echoing in the stillness, as if the very wood beneath her feet was warning her to turn back. But Emily's resolve had already hardened. She couldn't afford fear. Not now. Claire's presence was a jolt to her otherwise bleak existence. A reminder that she wasn't alone, that somewhere beyond the facades and lies, there were people willing to help. Yet, as Emily walked back down the dimly lit streets of Ashford, the sensation of being watched prickled at the back of her neck, making her quicken her pace. She arrived home to find the front door slightly ajar, the faintest glimmer of light spilling into the night. Heart-pounding, Emily pushed the door open, calling out softly, "James?" The house was silent, save for the low hum of the central heating. She stepped inside, the warmth enveloping her like a fragile shield against the chill outside. The living room was empty, but on the coffee table lay a small envelope, cream-colored and sealed with crimson wax. Curious and cautious, Emily broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was elegant, unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the chaos that had become her life. Asterisk, if you want answers, meet me at the Rosewood Manor estate tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Trust no one. Asterisk. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Rosewood Manor was the grand estate on the outskirts of Ashford, long abandoned, its crumbling walls whispered about in local legends as a place where secrets were buried deep. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her coat pocket. Questions swirled in her mind. Who had sent this? And what did they know about James's debts, or worse, about her? The morning sun dawned with a pale, reluctant glow, casting long shadows over Ashford's sleepy streets. Emily dressed with care, choosing a tailored charcoal gray coat over a silky emerald blouse and black pencil skirt. Her black leather boots clicked sharply against the pavement as she made her way toward Rosewood Manor, the letter burning a hole in her pocket. As she approached the estate's towering iron gates, Emily's pulse quickened. The manor loomed ahead, a monolith of faded grandeur, its windows dark and broken. Ivy clung to the stone walls like desperate fingers, and the air smelled of damp earth and forgotten memories. The gates creaked open with surprising ease, and Emily stepped inside. The gravel crunched beneath her boots, each sound amplified by the eerie silence. She moved through the overgrown gardens, past statues worn by time, until she reached the grand front door, half open as if inviting her in. Inside, the manor was a cavern of shadows and dust. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting fractured colors across the marble floor. Emily's footsteps echoed as she ventured deeper, the air thick with the scent of mildew and decay. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. Emily Carter. She whirled around to find a man standing at the top of a grand staircase. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his silver hair slicked back, eyes sharp as a hawk's. There was a charisma about him, a dangerous charm that sent a shiver down her spine. Mr. Whitmore, Emily said cautiously. She had heard the name whispered in Ashford circles, an enigmatic figure with ties to both legitimate business and the city's darker underbelly. "I'm glad you came," Whitmore said, descending the stairs with a fluid grace. "I know about your predicament, and I might have a solution." Emily's heart pounded. "What kind of solution?" Whitmore smiled thinly. "A way to clear your husband's debts. But it comes at a price." Before she could respond, the grand double doors slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. The manor seemed to hold its breath. "Price?" Emily echoed, her voice barely a whisper. Whitmore's eyes glittered. "Let's just say, in this game nothing is free. And trust is a currency more valuable than gold." As he extended a gloved hand, Emily realized the path she had stepped onto was far more treacherous than she'd imagined. Behind every promise lay a shadow, and the deeper she delved, the more she risked losing herself. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows, carrying with it a faint, chilling laughter. Somewhere in the darkness a secret waited, one that could either save her marriage or shatter her world forever. And as the manor's ancient walls seemed to close in around her, Emily understood that her real journey was only just beginning. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she hesitated before taking Mr. Whitmore's gloved hand. His grip was firm, almost unervingly confident, and the faint scent of aged leather and tobacco clung to him like a cloak. The grand room felt colder now, the stained glass windows casting fractured shadows that danced like specters across the cracked marble floor. "Tell me," Emily said, steadying her voice despite the whirlwind of fear and curiosity inside her, "what kind of price are we talking about?" Whitmore's eyes narrowed, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ah, you're sharp. I like that. But the details? Well, those come later. First, I need to know you're serious. That you're willing to play the game." Emily swallowed. She thought about James, his reckless charm masking desperation, the web of lies and debts that threatened to swallow them whole. She thought about herself, a woman caught between duty and survival, on the edge of losing everything. "All right," she said finally. "I'm listening." Whitmore nodded approvingly. "Good. But before we proceed, a word of advice. In this world, appearances can be deceiving. Trust no one, not even those closest to you." Emily's mind flashed back to the mysterious message she'd received. The warning that someone was watching, that danger lurked in the shadows of her own home. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why help a stranger?" Whitmore's gaze softened just a fraction. "Because I see something in you. Strength. Resourcefulness. And because sometimes helping the right person can tip the scales." Suddenly a faint noise interrupted them, a soft shuffle of footsteps from the corridor behind. Whitmore's expression hardened instantly, and Emily turned sharply to see a figure emerge from the shadows. That it was Claire, the woman from the pier. Her eyes met Emily's with a mix of urgency and caution. "Whitmore," Claire said sharply, "we don't have much time." Whitmore glanced at Emily, then back at Claire. "It seems the night is full of surprises." Emily felt a surge of adrenaline as the two exchanged a tense glance. The web of alliances and secrets she was stepping into was far more complex than she'd imagined. "Come with me," Claire urged, motioning toward a narrow staircase leading downward. "There's something you need to see." Without waiting for a response, Claire led the way into the depths of the manor. Emily followed, heart pounding, heels clicking on the stone steps. The air grew colder and heavier as they descended, the flickering light of a solitary lantern casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. They entered a dimly lit room, a hidden cellar filled with stacks of papers, ledgers, and photographs pinned to the walls. Maps of Ashford and surrounding areas were marked with red circles and notes scrawled in hurried handwriting. Emily's eyes widened. "What is all this?" Claire turned to her, eyes sharp as knives. "Evidence. Proof of the people James owes money to and the bigger network behind it." Whitmore's right. This is more than just debts. It's a dangerous game of power and control. Emily ran a hand over the wall, tracing the edges of a photograph. A smiling James at their wedding, oblivious to the strings pulling him in every direction. "Why show me this?" Emily asked. "Because you're not just a victim, Emily. You're a player now. And if you want to survive, you need to understand the board." A chill ran down Emily's spine. The comfortable life she once knew had crumbled, replaced by shadows and secrets. Yet, in that cold cellar, beneath the weight of truth, a spark of determination ignited within her. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from above, fast, deliberate. The lantern flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat. Claire's voice was a whisper. "They're coming. We have to move." Now that Emily's heart thundered as she grabbed Claire's hand, pulling herself up from the wall. As they hurried toward the staircase, a voice echoed through the manor's ancient halls. "Emily Carter, you shouldn't have gotten involved." The door slammed shut behind them, and the chase was on outside. The night deepened, swallowing their footsteps. Somewhere in the distance a clock told midnight, a haunting reminder that time was running out. And in the shadows unseen eyes watched, waiting for the next move in a deadly game where trust was the ultimate gamble. Emily realized with a jolt. The real danger wasn't just the debts or the threats, it was the secret still buried in the darkness, waiting to unravel everything she thought she knew. The game had only just begun. The pounding of Emily's boots against the cold stone stairs echoed like thunder in the narrow passageway beneath Rosewood Manor. Claire's grip was tight and urgent, pulling her forward through the labyrinthine cellar corridors, dimly lit by flickering wall sconces that cast long trembling shadows. Each breath Emily took came out in sharp clouds, mingling with the damp, musty air heavy with the scent of earth and old wood behind them. The rapid footsteps grew louder, a relentless, ominous pursuit. Emily didn't dare look back. Panic threatened to surge, but she forced herself to focus, to move faster, her heels clicking sharply despite the uneven floor. She could hear Claire's whispered curses as they rounded a corner, narrowly avoiding a pile of broken crates. At last, they reached a narrow iron door, its rusted hinges groaning as Claire pushed it open. Beyond lay a steep staircase leading up, a faint glow of moonlight filtering through a barred window at the top. Almost there, Claire urged breathlessly. Once we're out, I'll explain everything. Emily's heart hammered in her chest. The manor's sinister walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating. She clutched the silver locket at her neck, a small comfort amid the chaos. They ascended swiftly, the moonlight growing stronger with each step until they burst out into the cool night air, gasping as if tasting freedom for the first time. The sprawling grounds of the manor stretched before them, bathed in silver light, with twisted ivy clutching the ancient stone walls. Claire glanced back nervously. We need to get to the village. Whitmore's men will be here soon. Emily nodded, determination sharpening her gaze. What exactly is going on? Why is Whitmore involved in all this? Claire hesitated, then said, Whitmore's not just some mysterious benefactor. He's part of a network, powerful, ruthless. They control money, influence people. James got tangled with the wrong crowd, and now you're caught in their web. Emily's mind reeled. The man she thought was her husband was drowning in debts to dangerous criminals, and now those criminals were coming for her. Why me? Emily demanded. Why drag me into this? Claire's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. Because you're the only leverage they have left. And because you're stronger than you think. Suddenly, the distant sound of engines roared to life. Headlights flickered through the trees at the edge of the estate. They're here, Claire said sharply. We have to move. They darted through the overgrown gardens toward a narrow path leading back to Ashford's village center. The night was alive with the scent of damp earth and blossoming wisteria, but there was no time for beauty, only survival. As they reached the outskirts of town, Claire slowed, her breath ragged. There's someone you need to meet. Someone who can help. Emily's legs trembled with exhaustion and fear. Who? Claire smiled grimly. A man who's been watching all this from the sidelines. Someone who doesn't take kindly to Whitmore's kind. They arrived at a small, inconspicuous pub nestled between weathered brick buildings, the kind of place where secrets were currency and whispers could topple empires. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and laughter, a stark contrast to the tension outside. A tall man with silver-streaked hair and piercing blue eyes sat alone in a shadowed booth. His tailored jacket was worn but clean, and a half-smoked cigar rested between his fingers. Emily Carter, he said without looking up. I've been expecting you. Emily swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. Who are you? He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with intensity. Call me Morgan. And if you want to save James and yourself, you'll need to trust me. Outside, the wind whispered through the narrow streets, carrying with it a chilling promise. The battle for Emily's future was only beginning, and deep in the shadows someone watched, smiling. Because in this game of power and deceit, every move had a price, and the ultimate checkmate was yet to come.